tell the audience about how you got started in real estate. I'm excited to introduce my friend Jordan Atkin to the podcast today. I don't think there's probably anybody who I've learned more about real estate than Jordan. And he's been a huge influence in my life and how I think about real estate. So I'm excited to showcase him and his expertise. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tanner.
So let's get started back in the tiny little town of Elko. Population like less than 20,000.
Yep.
That's where you came from. Let's get started there.
Yeah, so Elko is a small town right between here, and it was a great place to grow up, but I was looking for some more. So I moved down to St. George after I graduated in 2008 and stayed there until I moved up here in 2013.
So you moved to St. George because you wanted to be, was it pro golfer?
I did. I was trying to play golf professionally.
How far along did you get in the golf trip? Sorry to quiz you on this. I actually don't know.
Not far enough.
Okay.
I got far enough into it to see some truly exceptional players in their 40s and 30s and 40s living out of the back of a van, driving alone across the country, and realized that I thought there was a different path for me.
That kind of sounds nice sometimes, honestly. So were you working at a golf shop?
I was.
And how'd you get into real estate?
So when I decided, I actually had decided I wasn't going to go to college. I walked onto the Dixie State golf team, which is the college in St. George. And I realized I couldn't go to school for 4 years. And I was like, well, how else can I get some money to play golf and do tournaments outside of the collegiate system? And I had been working as, like a bag boy at a golf course for a while. And a lot of the guys coming, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the Porsches and Escalades and things all seemed to be in real estate. So I thought, oh, maybe there's something there. So, hop on Google. It says, oh, you can get a 3% commission doing that. And I did the math and realized I could make more. If I could sell a house a month, I would make more than I did working full time at a golf course, and didn't think I would work on it at quite as much. And then that would fuel the money to pursue golf.
So you worked at a production home builder. Did you do anything before that real estate related, or was it straight to the production home builder?
Yeah. So when I decided to get into real estate, like so many people, I had no idea, it's a very broad category. So I decided I would become a residential real estate agent, thinking if I could help learn what people were looking for in properties that they were buying, that might help inform how I could buy a property. So I started as a residential agent, and through just sheer dumb luck, I went to work for being a model agent and a production home builder in 2010. That was really my first thing in real estate.
How was the market back then? Because 2010, it was kind of like the start of it coming back, I guess, or like the bottom of the market, maybe 2011.
Yeah. So for the first little bit that I was in the business in St. George, Utah, the market was going down. It had the air was out of the balloon, so it was a pretty slow drip down. But I started working on a lot of short sales in my work outside of what I was doing for the builder. So it went down for a little bit, and then has been obviously a rocket ship. So I will caveat this whole conversation that I picked my time to get in exceptionally well, and it has smoothed out a lot of the learning curves.
I always tell people when they ask me, like, your number one best advice for getting started in real estate, I'm like, start with 20% year over year tailwinds. It helps a lot.
It really does.
And so I actually don't know this. Didn't you work as a project manager or something for a little bit as well?
Yeah. So I I like to fail quickly. So, within 2 weeks of going to school, I decided that wasn't for me. Within a few months of being an agent, I realized that was not for me. I think it's a great career for a lot of people, but I just couldn't balance the emotional side that people had with buying a home. With, I was like, it meets your square footage, your bed, bath, and budget. Like whether the wall's blue or green, like I don't see, I don't, and I always saw things more than what they could be. So I quickly learned I wasn't going to be able to stick it out as an agent for too long. And I had a client coming down from Idaho Falls, who was looking to, they were breaking ground on their retirement home, really big thing for them. And the concrete truck didn't show up. And so I started making phone calls, and that day I became a project manager. So I started with just kind of loosely helping oversee my clients' homes, and I didn't mess that up. So then I was given that subdivision. And when I left, I was overseeing 3 subdivisions for the builder.
How much did you actually learn as a project manager there? Was it kind of, do you feel like you were really well prepared construction wise after, or did you feel like you didn't know anything?
So I got into real estate when I was 20 years old. So I had, the proverbial chip on my shoulder thinking, how was I going to compete with people who had been in the business for 20 years? And I didn't have the experience, but what I did think that I could do in that setting was I could know more about our product than anyone else. So I leveraged the resources the builder gave me to really understand how homes come together and what features make a good home versus not. So I don't know if I got a lot of real training. We talked a lot about schedule, and it was, just making sure the next thing was always happening. But it was the desire and the interest in learning and thinking that that's how I could compete that I think really got my head around the construction process.
I want to take a sidebar here for a second, because you mentioned you kind of learned what makes a good house and what doesn't. And as I've gotten to know you, I respect how kind of analytical you are as like thinking about the numbers of the project, but you also design really good shit. So how do you cross that over, and like what did you learn from the production builder that you use today? Or I guess, how do you think about design?
I think maybe a way to frame it is, if you have the option between quality and cost, you should err on the side of quality. I think where that merges in is trying to find new is nice is another thing that I say. So you're knowing that you're putting a new product into whether it's a renovation or a new build, inherently, because that product is new, it's good. And then you're just trying to, match up the qualities that you see in high level design and find that more budget friendly option.
Did you have like a mentor or anything show you that, or was it kind of just like stumbling through it?
My sister's an interior designer, so I think that
helps.
Maybe some of the design that you like is actually a compliment to her.
Let her know I like it.
Okay.
So getting back, project manager, then we're getting close to the 2013 time when you moved up here. Are we still on pace for that?
Yeah. The only thing to add there is I knew right when I got in, I wanted to own real estate myself. I had been told be your own best client. I took that very seriously. So I started buying I bought my first flip in 2010 and my first rental in 2010 within a few months of getting in. It was a little easier at that point because pricing was pretty reduced and it wasn't nearly as competitive. But and then I leveraged the resources I had, again, just dumb luck. You go start flipping homes, and a big thing is, who are my subs that I need to call? Well, if I need someone to set tile, I just ask the tile setter who worked for the builder if they wanted to come help me. And because of the time, 2010, 2011, work was really sparse. They were very excited to have the opportunity to help.
And how'd you do your first? I think the number one question I get outside of just generic advice is like, how do you do your first deal? So how did you do your first deal?
I was showing a client a home. I think they were, they had a low $110,000, $120,000 budget.
It's crazy to look back and think you should have just bought every single thing that you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's those same homes would be, 400,000 today. So it's been quite a run. St. George, track subdivisions, builder goes in, builds 200 of, homes with 4 floor plans. There were 2 homes on the market with the same floor plan, same year built. One had just been in foreclosure. So another thing that was common was people would take the doors out, the light fixtures, they would break the tile, they would take the cabinets and appliances. And then the other house someone was living in, so it didn't have those features. I told my client they should buy the cheaper one, and then they could like fix it up to their, their taste and specs. And they didn't want to do that. They went for the one couple doors down, and I ended up flipping the home that they passed on because I thought that there was value there.
I always, when I was in my former life as a realtor, I was always trying to tell people that same thing. I'm like, if you just put in a little bit of work, you can make so much money, but people just don't want to do it. And frankly, at this point, I don't blame them. Construction is a pain in the ass. Okay. So you do that first deal and then you move to Salt Lake.
I did a bunch of deals down there.
And then you moved to Salt Lake.
Yeah, I moved to Salt Lake in February of 2013.
Was the thought process just a bigger market, or did you know anybody? Did you know a single person up here?
I did. I'm very close with my younger brother, Caden.
Shout out, Caden,
who you've met.
Utah Home Repairs.
Yep, he is now our general contractor that helps with TI and multifamily turns. We're really close. He was getting ready to graduate high school. I realized that I was going to be interested in moving to a bigger market. So we basically just sat down and said, okay, well, let's go through the schools that you were accepted to and see where there's overlap of where I may want to move. He's very, very smart. So it came down to being between Stanford and the U in biomedical engineering. And because I was already licensed in Utah, the growth trajectory and the demographics that were predicted for this market were super, super favorable. And one had a, average home price of 80,000 versus 800. So we moved up choice. I moved up to Salt Lake in February, and he joined me in May after he graduated high school.
So you get up here and basically nobody.
Yeah.
How did you start back up as a realtor, or did you just start flipping houses? Like, what did you start doing?
Yeah, it was actually hard because I had a decent income as an agent, but knowing I needed to rebuild my book of business, it was I elected to go strictly into investing at that point.
Okay. So how do you start building your network up here?
I got super lucky, a trend that you'll see.
Trend in both of our lives.
Yep. You just keep showing up and you have the ability to have luck come after you. So I went to work at Century 21 Everest under George Morris and John Syatt. And I got to meet a lot of great agents that way. And there was also Magellan, I think it was Magellan Title. Nudia Rivera at the time was an agent there, and she told me, if you're interested in flipping houses, you should go to SLRIA, which is the Salt Lake Real Estate Investor Association. And that is how I started to penetrate into the market.
So you go to this RIA meeting, you've done a couple deals. Can you give some context to like your experience at this point?
By the time I moved up here, I had maybe flipped 10 homes or something and had 4 or 5 rental properties.
So you move up here and you just start networking with people. Were you doing wholesaling? I can't remember.
Like a lot of people who are newer, I had a little bit of a the squirrel effect, shiny object syndrome. I was involved in a lot of things because as soon as I got involved in the RIA, I started learning all sorts of, I didn't know what wholesaling was when I was in St. George. I would have probably made a lot more money had I, because we would go get a couple contracts, our REO properties under contract or bid on short sales, and I would just get one and then I would be busy. So I would just give the other ones back. I didn't know you could do something with it. It's the same thing with flipping. I didn't know it was flipping homes until I went to the RIA, and I was like, oh, I've been doing that. I just thought it was putting them back together. I didn't know there was like this whole, industry of people doing it.
So how did you, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like, how did you even start thinking about it? Because like I feel like I got a PhD on the internet before I flipped my first home. And it just feels daunting to start without like someone holding your hand, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we skipped that. I started with partnering with my uncle.
Okay.
So on that first house, I knew my uncle was in real estate. I had no idea what he did, but I knew he lived in a very nice home in California and had some nice cars that I thought would be fun someday. And so I called him and was like, Gary, I have this crazy idea. I found this house, and I think if I put a new kitchen in it and fix the bathroom, I can sell it and make money. I will put every dollar I have into it. I'll roll my fees in, buy and sell side. I'll put every dollar I have into it if you will help bridge the gap. So I had saved up, I think, about $50,000 at that point. The home was 60,000, so he backstopped like 30 grand. And we partnered on my deals until even after I moved here in until almost 2015.
Okay. And then, so you're flipping houses, wholesaling, just kind of doing everything. And then I want to talk about, I don't know when this time period was, but you have the shower story.
Oh yeah.
What year was this?
2014.
Okay.
I almost went bankrupt. I got very, very close. So I had found a general contractor up here through some referrals who I had built a really good relationship with, and they had started asking some questions about how they may be able to participate. And what I saw was that they had accounts with suppliers that allowed them to pay, for doors and windows and things 60 days, 90 days later, and possibly even make payments on it. So I said, I'll give you half. What if I give you half of the rehab money up front? Then you use that money the best you can to float the project until we can get it closed. So the other half would be their contribution, which I knew some of it was on account. And then at the end, we established a split. So we bought the first one. It was going pretty well. We bought the second one. On the third one, I was like, all right, man, this is starting to, are you sure about this? Like, we haven't finished our first one. Oh yeah, no problem. On the fourth one, I knew better. But I saw the opportunity. I had the last couple bucks in my checking account. I was like, I'll do this again. Are you in? Yeah, he was in. And, what felt like days later, which was probably a couple weeks later, he called and said, hey, I need more money. I said, what do you mean? Our agreement was you were going to float it. Oh, no, that's not going to work. I need more money. And I think in total, it was nearly $600,000 in rehab between those 4 properties. And I all of a sudden needed to come up with like $275,000 that I didn't have for the other half. So as most people in that situation, you start feeling pretty down in the dumps on like, oh my gosh, what do you do? And you really become paralyzed. So one day, in the best place for ideas is in the shower. I was wrapping up my day, and I realized in that moment that feeling sorry for myself wasn't going to solve the problem. I had to take action. I had to take a step forward and try to do something different than, just trying to catch the knife. I needed to take control of my situation, and I did. I think it was 1847 East, 900 South. I wholesaled that deal a couple, 2 weeks later and made $87,000. I used that money to finish the first flip, got that sold, and between some other wholesale deals and getting that, I worked through getting out of that hole. But it was really close. I borrowed money from my, at the time, 18-year-old brother who,
shout out Caden.
on his student loans and credit cards that, he would get a bunch in the mail because he was a student. And I remember getting cash advances on those cards to pay contractors, and eventually got out. But it was really stressful. And I've been pretty focused on not being in that situation again since it happened.
It really does only take one of those situations to just scare you straight.
Yeah.
For life. But I wanted to talk about that because I think people see, what TAG SLC is today and frankly, all the success you've had. And I don't think a lot of people understand how stressful it is, just investment management in general, whether you're flipping houses, developing stuff. It definitely doesn't go as smoothly and as cleanly as it does on Instagram or Facebook or whatever.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing that story. Okay, so you're going to the RIAs, you're wholesaling, you're flipping, and then you decide that you want to start doing apartments. What led to that?
Yeah. I was fortunate. I had a mentor that I sat down with in late 2015 who gave me the advice to do bigger deals. It took a little while of scratching my head as to how to do that. We were flipping pretty decent sized homes at the time, in the $700,000-800,000 range, and 2014, 2015 in Salt Lake was a pretty good poke.
It's like 2 million today.
Yeah, I didn't want to necessarily push much higher than that because I felt like there was a pretty solid barrier at $1 million. And I also have I've always wanted a fairly small team, so I didn't want to, really expand my team to just do more. So we were trying to figure that out. And then one day I saw on Wenco Drive, I think 1063 Wenco, there were 3 duplexes that were listed by the same agent, by the same owner. And, and the agent remarks said must be sold together with these other deals. At that point, I had bought fixed held duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. So I put it in my underwriting model, my for rent underwriting model. And at the bottom, I so distinctly I just wrote ×3 at the bottom of what the total cash flow would be, the total equity gained on the rehab, and how much down payment I would need. And a light bulb just clicked in that moment where I was like, this is how I can do bigger deals. I can have my per unit expense will be less per unit, but in aggregate, I can buy more. And instantly, overnight, we stopped flipping homes and focused on multifamily. And then through that, I had a site at 51 South 8th East, right off of South Temple in Salt Lake. And thinking through this kind of multifamily thing, I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this property? And it happened to be zoned for multifamily. So I tore down about a 3,000 square foot house, super dilapidated, that would have taken a huge rehab budget. And we ended up building nearly 3,000 square foot townhomes there.
Quite the undertaking for your first development project. Was it just kind of shooting from the hip, or was there anything methodical about this is my first development project and this is what I'm looking for?
Well, I already owed the land, so it was a little forced on me. But life is a lot easier when you're looking back than forward. I had worked for a production home builder. I had overseen the construction of 100 single family homes. I had built my own spec homes. I had done mass, $300,000 renovations, dug out basement, did additions. So construction, because of how I got here, construction has been maybe easier for me than other people who haven't had that experience.
You're looking at him right now. Okay.
So I felt confident that I had when I worked with the builder, I was given improved lots, stubbed utilities. We started with digging, slab on grade foundations. So I felt confident that, as someone who's 25 only can, I was confident that if I could figure out the city process and I could get a good excavation contractor to handle my horizontal work, I was confident I could build the building.
And what did you learn on that first deal? A lot?
A lot. Yeah. I don't know if I could break it. We would spend the whole podcast, everything.
What are one or two, major takeaways from, because we've had this conversation. You really don't know what you don't know until you're sitting there with a construction loan trying to figure something out. You can listen to this podcast as much as you want. You can go out there, you can sell houses, you can do anything. But until you're in that situation, you don't know what's going on. So if you have a couple,
Yeah. Um, our first two deals we financed privately. I had been in the hard money, borrowing hard money for everything else. So I just applied that same model because I didn't know how to get a bank loan. I just didn't know how. So don't, if I, I'm a lot more conservative on how I think about debt. Since those first two, we moved to bank loans and equity versus a full debt capital stack. So that was one. The another huge one, which is you can't just hand even the best contractor. I don't think you can just hand them the plans and say see you in 8 months. Let me know if there's issues. You need to be proactive in engaging in those conversations. And then probably the earlier in the process that you can pick things and the better, because there's sometimes conflicts that you don't realize until later down the road that if you would have been maybe a little more, it could be like the height of the floor that you're going to use, right? And then you have tile at a different height than your wood floor or something like that. That if you have the selections made in advance, you're not having to, either redo things or change some of those nuances later.
okay, you touched on a couple things. I want to just go through because I'm sure you're getting hit up all the time. Like, I've been a realtor for 5 years and now I want to be a developer.
Mm-hmm.
So let's walk through kind of just not all no developments are really straightforward, but let's just walk through as straightforward as possible development project, how you look at it. So I'm a broker. I send you a deal. What do you care about?
Well, the first thing is it in Salt Lake City? My team only goes ground up in Salt Lake proper. So that would be our first thing.
Why is that, by the way?
I fell in love with the, I'm from a very small town. And when I lived in St. George, I was on the west side, toward Ivins and Santa Clara. That is also more rural. So when I moved up here, I just fell in love with East Side Salt Lake and, the old the old historic stuff mixed in with transit and the university and the downtown, and really like that. And because I have no formal background in this, the first deal that we did was a real education experience. So there was a sense of comfort working in the same municipality and being able to go to the same people and ask questions. And then as we expanded, we just made the decision that we would rather, do a duplex in Salt Lake than chase 200 units across the United States. We're small. Our capital sources are maybe more limited, especially then than now. So I felt that I could compete, in a 5 square mile sandbox, but I didn't have the confidence that I would be able to do that everywhere.
Okay, so it's in Salt Lake City and it's we'll say it's in the Central Ninth area.
There you go. So the first thing we look at is how we can park it. So we would pull up the assessor, which sometimes has like the mean bounds descriptions. We would then pull up the plat from the county to confirm the dimensions. And since I have done this a time or two, I know how big a lot needs to be in order to accommodate different unit types and parking configurations. So that would be the first thing we would look at. Then we would look at the zoning map to see what zone the property was in, and then you can kind of cross-reference that with your zoning ordinance to start kind of moving through that, and then just get out a yellow pad. Okay, the lot's 80 feet wide. Put the setbacks in there, kind of see what you're working with.
And how do you think about the due diligence process? Because I think a lot of people, when they're starting off on development, it's like, oh, I can get it entitled in 3 months or 6 months. But there's also some other aspects like survey, phase 1, geotech, engineering, architecture, but you don't want to burn through money in the wrong order. Like you don't want to have a fully approved site plan and then find out that the site is contaminated with, like a dry cleaner used to be there.
Sure.
So how do you think about the order of operations in that? Like day 1, what do you get? Day 5, etc.
If it's in the city and we want to pursue the site and our initial back of the napkin shows that it is going to be viable from a unit configuration and kind of how we're thinking about it, I think the first thing we would order is a phase 1. But we're phase 1, the geotech would probably come later. So the phase 1 and the survey would be the first things we order. And frankly, we would, if we were going to pursue the site, we would just do them all at once.
Okay. And so all of that comes back. You've got a good idea on what you can and what you can't build. How does the entitlement process work in Salt Lake City, maybe compared to other municipalities like by right zoning? How do you think about that?
Yeah, entitlement is an interesting word because I think has a lot of meanings. Salt Lake is unique in that a lot of the zones that we work with for multifamily specifically are by right zones. So there's no preliminary plat or site plan approval. If you meet the zoning ordinances, you can oftentimes go straight to permit.
And is that kind of just a, I guess, trial and error thing, or how do you figure that out? Like how do you know if something's by right? Are you digging through the code? Are you talking to architects, or is it just you've been doing it long enough that you know?
Assuming you didn't know, I have personally taken the view that if you are going to be putting your money in, you're on it, your name is on the line, that you need to read it and you need to know it. I think it's good to lean on professionals, but it's like what, trust but verify. I would read it myself. So I read the code a lot in establishing, and that's probably how I would start.
Okay. And so, you get it all entitled and you're ready to, pull your permit, but you got to go raise a bunch of money. This is kind of a broad question, but how do you think about fundraising in general? Like if someone says, Jordan, I want to invest, a Korean pension fund comes to you and says, I want to give you $100 million or $10 million. How do you think about what you want to accomplish for your investors?
I would say always keep the light on for fundraising. We're always trying to have conversations with folks who want to be in the marketplace and understand their goals. We if someone has capital that they want to deploy, I would rather get myself out of a deal to get them involved when the time is right, rather than, wait for the cosmos to align when you have a deal and they're ready to write a check. As far as big checks, we've actually had a struggle with that because, we get inquiries about deploying equity. And my first question is always, how small of a check will you write? Our deals in 23 for development ranged from a 4-unit townhome to 100 pre-development into 188 5/2 podium style apartment buildings. So very large spectrum, and that happens because we constrain ourselves geographically, that we're okay doing those smaller deals.
Okay. Want to talk about you mentioned that you were borrowing hard money for a lot of these construction projects early on, but now you're going to be a little bit more conservative and you're going to hit up Chris at University Federal. What do you borrow from credit unions? What do they want to see? Like, what's the difference between you and someone else getting a loan?
Well,
I think that was a poor way of phrasing it. How would someone get a loan from a credit union? What do the credit unions need to see?
Yeah. So as a tangent to that, I would say for folks starting out, one of the other pieces of advice I got from my mentor was build relationships with local banks and credit unions. If you go to one of the, Chase or Wells Fargo or something, you may have your bank account there, and they probably are a really great, resource to help. Very difficult to tell them a story if you don't fit into the box. And I think that's probably why I went private on those first couple, because I didn't have a track record that would attract a bank. So, but a local credit union, especially, we like them because I can go meet, the president of the bank. I can go, have dinner with them or have lunch. You can go talk to people who are on the credit committee, and you can tell a bit more of a story. Some of the things that I've been told are important is, the obvious one is have some experience in, at least some applicable experience in some way that you can highlight. The other would be a net worth equal to the loan amount, is another one that we've been told. And then they also look at your global cash flow and what loans you've guaranteed, and what the cash flow characteristics of those are.
So let's say someone doesn't have they want to do a $5 million development project with a $3 million loan, but they don't have a $3 million net worth.
Mm-hmm.
How would you advise them to solve that problem?
It might. I'm not a lender, so I don't fully know. But one thing I would think, it could be offset by the sheer amount of equity that they're bringing. If you're maybe 60% won't get it there, but 50% would. And then the second thing, I would probably just encourage them to bring in an experienced partner to help give the guarantee some weight.
Okay. So we get this loan, we get it all capitalized. We'll just say it's a non-2023 market where you can build apartments and actually make money.
Sure.
How do you think about executing the deal? You talked about project management, construction management, lease up, asset management. How do you think about executing on a deal?
Well, the execution definitely starts before you get your loan. So once you have your plans pretty well baked, where you think you're going to get your permit, then you would start talking to your equity providers and your contractors. And so getting your plans out, assuming you didn't hire someone to help you go through the design process on the contracting side, you need to go get bids.
Do you think, sorry to cut you off,
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend people do a design build, or do you think they should get their plans fully baked and kind of value add or value engineer them themselves and then go get like a cost plus with a GMP or a fixed fee?
I would say this has changed for me. And it also might change on the product that you're building. So when I first heard about like design assist and design build, I couldn't get my head around how I could choose my contractor before I had plans ready and before I could vet out their pricing. As I have done projects, I realized that that's actually a lot more valuable, a better way to do it, especially on podium style apartment projects where there's just more moving parts, because they can influence the design of the building with things that they're either currently seeing in the market or just through their track record, that architects may not be as aware of. And there's a little bit of a conflict there where architects' job, or how I think about it, maybe they don't, is to design beautiful buildings.
Big, beautiful, vacant buildings.
Yeah, almost at any expense. I just have not met many. There are some, but not met many who are as in tune with how things affect cost as contractors who maybe wouldn't design the most attractive, aesthetically attractive building, but it would be really budget friendly. So we've kind of shifted to inviting contractors to the table earlier in our designs.
Interesting. Okay, so I cut you off, but so execution wise, you have your plan submitted, you're working with a contractor, whether it's a cost plus, GMP, design assist, whatever that is. What about the actual construction management? What are you doing in the OAC meetings?
Yeah, so OAC is an owner architect contractor meeting. I highly recommend them. It should probably be weekly. If even on a small job, I would probably do it weekly and just keep it to 20 minutes. That's the whole point of that, is having everyone in a room on site every week to talk about what has happened, what is happening, and what is going to happen. Because you just pick up on different things when you're on site with someone. You can go by on your own, but being there, you can ask questions and try to get ahead of things before. So that's a really big thing to do, is make sure you're attending OAC meetings.
Is there anything else that you think of during the construction process, like the outside of the OAC meetings that you're trying to do? Are you looking at, other buildings and seeing how they're leasing up and kind of changing your floor plan, or not your floor plans, but designs or anything? What else goes into the actual development process?
I think if you're going to be in the business, you need to probably be looking at comps all the time. I walk through buildings regularly, renovated product, new construction product, to keep an idea of what's at least going on in our market. I would say design stuff is probably more driven by cost overruns in different areas where you may need to pivot, or either the contractor or a supplier, or even the sub gives you some alternatives that you need to explore, more than changing as a result of what other people are doing for us.
Okay. So you wrapping up construction, you get into lease up. Are you hiring third party? Are you managing it yourself? What do you think about it?
Multifamily is all third party.
Okay. And then how do you think of, I guess, ownership in the long term, or I guess time frames of ownership? Like, if you build something, do you want to hold it forever? Or are you looking to maximize value and sell? Does it depend on your equity? How do you think about that?
The Over time, we've become longer term holders as a goal. It's a very capital intensive business when you first start out, so being a little more transactional. We like to say that we sell our Bs so that we can hold our As. But at the end of the day, the guy who's writing the check is they get to make the decision. So we've done deals that are more merchant build, lease, and sell. And then we, because that's what the equity was looking for. And we have others that we have a predetermined 10, 5, 10, 15-year hold post C of O, with reevaluation markers at various points in the future.
We talked a little bit earlier about development doesn't really work today. And today is December 4th, 2023. Building apartments does not work. You heard it here first. Let's go over why it doesn't work, and then let's get into what you're currently doing, which is the covered land plays.
For us, we have 4 podium buildings that are fully permitted that we're holding off on. I think the main reason for that for us is just not knowing where cap rates are going to be, or where values are going to be on the backside. Compounded with that is just the interest rate environment. The last quote I had from a local bank was 1.5% origination and 9% interest on a floating rate that can be adjusted every 30 days. So couple that with where long-term rates are going to be. I don't want to pull the trigger on even a 6.5 yield on cost, which 24 months ago they were really, really attractive deals. Because I don't know if it's going to be worth a 6 or a 7 or an 8 when we're done.
Probably should have asked this earlier, but how do you think about underwriting? Do you look at equity multiple, IRR, yield on cost, cap rates? How do you think about that?
I'm not smart enough to do an IRR calculation, so luckily I have some team members in Excel to help me with that. But I like to focus on unlevered yield on cost.
What is that, by the way?
All of your NOI divided by all of your costs.
Great.
And we just look at that at stabilization. So I think this has been something that's kept us from being super competitive in the existing multifamily space. Is I don't like putting 3%, 5%, 7%
Yeah.
annual rent increases in a pro forma, and then saying at year 5, on top of that, I'm going to get some cap rate compression, and oh, whoop-de-doo, we get a 30 IRR. I'm looking at, if, what do I think is going to happen? You start a project, you may not deliver it for, from the first time you look at it, for 3 years would be pretty quick. I don't know where the market's going to be at the end of 3 years, let alone another, 7 on top of that.
And to clarify, we laughed about saying 7, not because I underwrite 7, because we know people who underwrite 7.
Yeah, I've seen a deck or two. Not many people underwrite rents going down.
Which, I mean, today you probably should. Like, Origin Investments put out a couple different articles about rents actually going down in some markets, where if you would have asked in 2021, a lot of investment managers and developers, I mean, I saw a couple deals that were 7.7655 as far as rent growth over their hold term. That 7 turned into -1. So
we like the Utah market. We like Salt Lake. We are convinced that it's going to grow. So if it makes sense when it opens, or the day you buy it, or the day that renovation is done, we think that, ride it out and let the market take care of itself.
So getting back to kind of what you're up to today.
Yeah.
I'm a little biased because I'm an LP in one of the deals, but I think the covered land play kind of gets the best of all the worlds. If you're buying existing assets, generally there's not a huge value pop without, I'm going to say, taking a lot of risk. And if you're doing development, there's a lot of, I guess, future predicting that makes it a little difficult. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about how you get the best of both worlds with covered land plays.
Covered land plays, yeah. One of my favorites. So to take a step back of how we got into the strategy, we did land assemblages. For those who don't know, basically you instead of just buying one lot and doing your development, you buy, you amalgamate, you
buy the block.
Yeah, you assemble more than one. And sometimes that happens fast. You just go knock on the neighbor's door and they're ready to go then. And other times there's, delay. And some projects warrant delaying. Like you can do a good project with, one lot, but if you were able to get one of the surrounding ones, you get, this fantastic scale or something, pricing power or whatever. So in 2018, we started acquiring commercial property on our own, off our own balance sheet, without partners, because we saw some characteristics within those lots that we liked for the longer term. We had been interested in being in commercial, and ultimately they had what felt like more stable cash flow. The rent to land price was stronger, and then we did it ourselves because we're stewards of capital, and I didn't want to take someone's money into a strategy that I didn't know. So we just started doing it ourselves and buying these. And over time, we saw that, we call them super lots as well, where there's something more to do with the land than just what the building use is. So a covered land play is an existing building that produces a satisfactory level of return, but the land, the characteristics of the land give you an additional exit strategy.
And so you go buy a dumpy industrial building in the CC or CG or RMF 35 zoning in Salt Lake City, and you look at it initially as an old dumpy industrial building with the upside somewhere down the road of maybe a 5/2 or a 5/3 or some type of apartment project. How do you think about rezoning that in the future, or I guess the entitlement side in general? Are you looking to rezone these for higher and better uses, or what's kind of the formation of how you look at those deals?
Yeah. So that's another reason why we like it, right? If you're going to change the zone on a property, in Salt Lake, we think of it as a 12-month process if everything goes fairly well.
18 for me.
So, if you have a vacant piece of land and you want to go rezone it, you're just, unless you're, a great negotiator, which is very hard in the run up, right? When things were so competitive, you're just paying out money while you go through that process. We are able to acquire properties that have sufficient cash flow that we can do that entitlement work that is sometimes years, while receiving rent. So different projects get triggered for different reasons. We have some that we anticipate rezoning, but they're just on the shelf waiting. And then there's other ones that we still want to hold for a long term, but for some reason, we're electing to start that process right now.
So one of those deals is, we'll just call it Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a great kind of, I guess, story of one deal leading to another with potentially other deals. So let's go there.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, who sent this to you?
One of my favorite podcasters, Tanner Webster.
Absolutely.
So it's a long story because it started in, what was that, 2019? Probably. We acquired two buildings on Paxton Avenue. So if you want to
north of
if you want to Google it, it's second west in Paxton. So it's 13th south on the southern end, then Lucy, then Paxton as you move north. So we had two lots there. We thought they were, basically a covered land play. There was a warehouse and a landscape yard. And we initially applied for a LIHTC project there, a low income housing tax credit. But when you don't have any experience and have never done it before, it's not that easy to win those. So that fell off. We had someone approach us about the warehouse. We sold that. And then we entitled the 12 unit townhome deal that we subsequently sold to you and your group. So you were in the know about the neighborhood, and the lot across the street came up for sale. You were chasing that. And then I don't know how you got wind of the Lucy parcel.
I'm in the market.
He's in the market. And if you have a deal, give him a call.
Thank you.
So you, gave us the lead on it. I'm not sure why it was a pass for you at the moment, but
I didn't have any money.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So 7,500 square foot industrial deal on half acre lot, couple ground level roll up doors. At the time, it was a little, it was about 50% office. The seller was selling because they needed to relocate. They didn't need as much space. They had been purchased by a regional operator and were trying to consolidate operations. So they didn't need as much space. So we acquired the property knowing it was going dark in 90 days and sought to re-tenant the property. During that time, as we were under contract and leading up to the close, we got a call from a broker who had a 1031 buyer who was getting very, very close to the end of their exchange. I actually ended up meeting the guy at the property on the last day he could identify at about 2:00, and he ended up identifying. We have a internal program where it's a lot easier on 1031s because they are taking title to real property, but a typical 3% fee on that. But we offer a 4% fee if you roll your commission into the deal, so like a bonus. Mostly because we see a lot of benefit in getting brokers onto the ownership side, and then we kind of try to incentivize that. We think that if we're partners, hopefully you think of us before your other buyer clients. So help that guy get paid. He did roll into the deal. You came into the deal, which was a huge compliment and exciting for us. The 1031 guy got to place his capital, and then we found a tenant. We acquired that land for around $70 a foot for the dirt. It was about $190, I think, for the building. Knowing that we were 150 feet away from a track stop or a light rail stop, and that this would be a good development up front. So we had underwrote it both as townhomes and apartments for the future, but we knew this was in 23, so we knew that we weren't going to look to develop right out the gate. So we kept those options open.
And then that broker subsequently brought you probably, these are two of the deals that I'm just most sad about that I don't personally, I'm not the general partner on.
Yeah.
Brought you the Sandy Industrial property.
Well, second best is being an LP. So.
It is. I'm honored to be involved in some capacity. But let's talk about that relationship. And he rolled his fee in. He was happy.
Yeah.
And brought you the greatest deal I've seen in the last 5 years, probably.
We're excited about it. Yeah. So he is primarily an industrial broker. And we, while we were going through the process with his 1031 client, we let him know that we definitely had an appetite to buy more. So he had located a deal in Sandy. It's about 91,000 square feet with 64 tenants. And he wanted to buy it for his own, on his own, rather than, take it to market and sell it. So we were able to structure a deal, where he actually is participating in the general partnership upside with us for bringing the deal. And we set the deal up, went and raised the equity, and just closed that on Friday.
I really do think that's the best deal I've seen in the last 5 years. I'm excited for you on that.
Yeah, in place rents, on like a modified gross setup, 56 cents a square foot. We think market rate is $1.25 to maybe even $1.45. We only underwrote $1.20 in our upside case. So just
I agree with those assumptions, by the way.
Just a great little block and tackle deal. Go in there, roll rents over to triple net. It's going to be a big jump for some of these tenants from, about $500 to $2,000 out the door. But we have some great long-term seller finance debt on the property, which will allow us to keep our focus on maintaining occupancy, and maybe not have to push as hard on the rents. And then if we get a little lucky with the market, hopefully we'll be able to refinance, pull all the cash out, and go do it again.
So I want to talk about, you have TAG SLC, and then you also have John Adams with friends of the show, Tyler and Adam. Let's talk about that partnership, because they're involved in basically everything at this point on the covered land plays. Talk about how you met those two and kind of what you think they bring to the table.
Yeah. Tyler Tolbert and Adam Hemberger are my partners in an entity we call John Adams, which is a riff because my first partnership with Tyler, it was George Washington. And
that's fun.
As a fan of American history with, first partnership, second partnership. So that's how it ended up being John Adams. I met Tyler in 2013 within a couple months of moving up here. And we instantly hit it off. Our business plans have merged over time. He's way into cash flow, doesn't want to do flips, doesn't want to do ground up, really emphasizes, if it makes money today, it's going to work. And then I was coming from like that flipping background. So it's taken us some time for our mentalities to merge there. But we did our first deal in 2017. I think we had done some like transacting. He sold me some stuff. But we partnered up on our first commercial deal in 2017. I was subsequently introduced to Adam, who's out of the Bay Area, through Tyler, because they had met up at, it's 2017 or something, and I was introduced to Adam in 2019, and we bought our first deal together, which is a 22,000 square foot office complex on nearly 2 acres in downtown Salt Lake, in October of 2020.
Another great deal, by the way. How'd you find those deals, by the way?
That was that was listed on MLS by a residential broker that I had transacted with in the past.
I wanted to mention that because I personally had this belief until I started hanging out with you more. I thought all the good deals lived in the off market because that's kind of the world that I came from, was cold calling and getting told the most disrespectful things ever when I'd call people. I was like, this is the only way to find deals. But you found maybe a majority of your deals on the market, just a broker either pricing it very aggressively or just completely whiffing on their assumptions. And I just wanted to mention that there are good deals on the MLS occasionally.
Yeah, we still buy probably close to 40% of our deals off that are fully listed and marketed. I think that's an advantage of having, frankly, a smaller sandbox. That's part of why we were able to execute that and a number of deals is when you're only looking in such a small area, you can pick up on outliers, a lot easier.
So going back, Tyler has a lot of experience in existing assets.
Yeah.
Adam's from the Bay Area, tech giant, I'll call him.
Yeah.
How do you think about, one, your partnership with them, and then two, partnerships in general?
Yeah, we bring different stuff to the table. They help out a lot on keeping the machine running, and I like always trying to find the next new thing, and because a lot more of my focus is on the ground up component of it, which I think will merge a little bit more over time. But as of now, it's fairly it's like a full-time gig. So they help manage it, just keep things in line, help generally with like strategy and how we're thinking about things, and partnerships overall. I want to work with people that I like, know, and enjoy. I partner on almost everything, especially commercial real estate at scale it's a team sport. Unless you're born a Rockefeller, you're probably not going to do it on your own. And even then it wouldn't be as fun. So that's why, I like partnering with you. I like partnering with them. And, if you do good deals, there's enough to share.
Yeah. Want to talk about, you kind of just ran around and did deals kind of by yourself. Then you brought Kyle, friend of the show, along.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of our conversations over the last maybe 2-3 years have been about building an actual company.
Yep.
So how has that transformed, or I guess, how has that progressed over the recent years? Like how you think about, one, buying real estate, and two, the business of buying real estate?
It's slow. We, up and even now, I probably would say I have a really high paying job. I don't have a business, and we're trying to change that. Just, bull in the china shop, get it done and do whatever you have to do that. And now we're going back and, creating standard operating procedures and systems for everything that we're doing, and bringing on team members to help with that as we got to a scale that, it's just not practical for us, the three partners, to do it on our own, or even with our current staff.
So how do you think about the future of John Adams and TAG SLC? Do you think about yourself as a $1 billion under management, capital allocator, or do you think of yourself as, just continuing to play in the small sandbox, but doing a lot of projects?
I wish, I don't know if we're as thoughtful as that. I'm not sure I have as grand of ambitions as you do.
World domination.
Yeah, I really, so our average co-invest is 24%, 25% across our deal. So when we think about syndication, it's really throwing gasoline on what on our existing portfolio, what we already want to do, deals that we want to do, and inviting people who are like-minded and fun, and enjoyable to come on that journey with us. So we don't have, current plans to grow to a certain level. We just want to have fun and do it with people that we enjoy, and just build the best well-rounded portfolio in the Salt Lake market that we can.
You're one of the few people that I know who also invest passively as an LP to a pretty high degree. When you're investing as a limited partner or a passive investor, how do you look at deals, and what makes you say yes versus what makes you say no?
I got into the LP side through Adam. So when Adam came on, he had been primarily a LP. And as we, kind of shared war stories, he felt like he lacked some of the control of the outcome of deals. And I ended up being attracted to, wow, I can get a return and not have to go fight the city about getting it. So we set a goal to, have a certain allocation over time in limited partner deals. I'm fortunate to be an LP in some of your deals, which is exciting. So, it starts with, qualified sponsors. Are they able to articulate the business plan? How much of the return is levers that we think that they can control versus not? It's probably really similar to how people, elect to invest with us.
Cool. Jordan, this was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for
Appreciate you and everything you've taught me over the years, and looking forward to the next time you're on here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Tanner. Bye.